Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Knife Chats with Tobias. Welcome to a tale of two knives. Really, we're mostly going to just be talking about this one, but I will break this one out as well. Now, this knife you might have seen before. This was on Knife Delight's channel, Tom over at Knife Delights. This knife actually belongs to him. He sent it over to me to have a look at it. He suspects that it might be a knife used by the military, and one of the hardest things to prove is a negative. I cannot say that it is not used by the military, but I also cannot say that it is used by the military. Now, this is a knife, I'll show it a little bit more in a minute, but this is another knife. Now, this is one I've had for a while, and when I first picked it up, I thought also that this might have been something that was used by the military, mainly because the shape of it, at first glance, it kind of looked like an electrician's knife until I got it in hand and realized it's much larger than an electrician's knife. As you can see here, this is a Camillus TL29, and while at first glance it kind of looks like a TL29, it's not a TL29. And I thought what it was a liner lock version of a TL29 with an interesting take on it because it had a saw blade. Notice the kind of a Warncliffe style saw blade going on there with the cut all the way through there for your nail nick. And then it also had a rather large sheep foot blade, which also made me think maybe this was some kind of marlin spike knife, because on the back side it had this big old blade here, which is a screwdriver, very long skinny screwdriver, so it is not a liner lock like I first thought. And then the second blade on here is what could be a possible marlin spike, very straight spike though, and very pointy, so it could also be used as an awl. So maybe it's not really a knife, for rigging. It's maybe not really a rigging knife. I wasn't sure, and I thought at one time maybe this is some kind of military knife, but I have no proof or evidence of it being that. And the more I thought about it, it's like, no, this is probably somebody's idea. They just came up with it and it looked pretty cool. And, they marketed it. And the thing is nowhere does it say where it is made, who made it, or anything. Don't know if it's, Sheffield. Don't know if it was made in, China, Hong Kong, or whatever. There was no markings on it. And so it's always just been a mystery knife for me. And, sometimes that mystery can just drive you nuts. Very crudely made. So, which was one of the reasons I thought, well, maybe this was, made under a government contract or something. Maybe it was made for some military force out there in the world. Just don't know which one. But the more I think about it, maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part. Any case, then Tom got this knife, Tom over at Knife Delights, and this is his knife. I'll be sending it back to him. And he got it at I think he got it at a flea market or an estate sale or someplace like that. He mentioned it in his video, and I should have gone back and rewatched it, but I didn't. And it's a pretty cool knife. And as you can tell, at first glance, this kind of looks like a Duke or one of those black cat knives, except it's got two blades on there. So let's grab a black cat. So here's a Mercator or Mercator K55K black cat knife. These are made in Germany. As we can see here, Mercator, and on the back side here, Solid in Germany. And these are still being made today. And there are different sizes of these knives. And as you can see, this one, well, it's a lot larger than the basic one you see these days. This knife comes in right at what 4 3/8 inches, maybe 4.5 inches. However, this knife right out of the box, not including the bail, out of the box, out of the pocket, 5 1/4 inches long, closed. So this is a substantial knife. However, there were larger versions of this knife also made. And from what I understand, Mercator was making a knife similar to this, or Helfman was making a knife similar to this as far back as World War I. However, I have not seen one of them with 2 blades and also the other device on here. Now, this is the main blade on here. It is a slip joint knife, and it does not lock. The K55 locks. Got the lock on the back here. And I have seen larger ones of these, but I have not seen them with 2 blades. Now this blade also, from everything I'm looking at, it looks like this blade has been reprofiled. The tip might have broke or something, and then they made it more of a drop here than it originally was. I have a feeling, looking at the length of it, the fact that the blade is 3.5 inches long, and the other blade, which is a saw blade, is much longer. You can see there the difference. I assume that this blade probably was about a 1/2 inch longer, but probably dropped also, starting about this same spot. See here the length of the saw blade here, which is 4 inches. And I have seen a saw blade similar to this on another knife, but not out of Germany. So I think this blade was originally longer. Now, the other thing we have over here, everything has a very strong pull on it, which is also somewhat common among military knives. A lot of them had a very strong pull. Notice you got a pyramid-shaped poking tool there, you know, a very nice awl or punch coming off the back there. And very sharp edge there, but not a cutting edge. It's just a very straight right angle. Now, I think I have a knife somewhere in my collection that has a saw blade very similar to this, the way it is notched here, but for the life of me, I cannot find it. The closest I'm finding is this one, which was made by Corium, and it does have a funky little blade there, especially with the blunt in here. But this is also a double row of teeth going on. It does have the blunt portion and the way it goes up here, but if you notice this one, it has that cutout, that drop like that, and that is to allow you to get to the nail nick behind here. And I could have sworn I had a knife by Pradle in the past that had that cutout, or either that I tried to get one and did not get it. But I have seen this before, and I could have sworn I saw it on a French knife, which, you know, this does kind of look like a Duke too, so it could have been something that maybe the French or Belgium or someone might have used something similar to this for a military knife, or it might have been something made in France, or it might have been something made in Germany or Belgium or something like that. The only thing I can say for sure is that in the books I have on military knives, I have not seen this one show up. When I first saw it on Knife Delights, the first thing that popped into my mind was the CIA knife, I think they called it the demolition knife, that was used by the CIA and SOG during Vietnam. But after, you know, going back and looking at the book real quick, the only thing that resembles it is the fact that it's got a punch on the back and it has a blade up here. But the SOG demolition knife, or the CIA demolition knife, was a single blade knife, and it looks entirely different than this does. Could this have been something used by another military? Very possible, especially it could have very well been something that was Eastern European, maybe East German or something like that. Maybe it's something that was developed, after World War II or during World War II, and continued production in East Germany. But all of the items I've seen of German military knives during World War II, this is not one of them that shows up in any of the catalogs I've ever seen or anything like that. This knife, yes. This knife, no. And yes, there is that resemblance to it. So could this have been something that was developed in East Germany during, after 1954 Warsaw Pact time and all this other stuff? And was this something that could have been issued to the East German military, in which case the records would have been a little more scant. The information on weapons used by the Warsaw Pact and Russia, we have a lot of information on things like their bayonets. We have a lot of information on like fixed blades, and obviously other things like tanks, aircraft, small arms, machine guns, and stuff like that. But pocket knives, that's not something that is really pushed very hard. The one thing I would say is I would expect to see some kind, maybe would I expect to see a mark on it if it was a Warsaw Pact weapon, if this was something used by the Warsaw Pact. My first thought would be, yes, I would expect to see something on there. While this is a Polish bayonet, Warsaw Pact era Polish bayonet, their Type 2 bayonet, and if you notice, 0043, it's got a number on there. That is the only mark it has on it, is the number, and that matches it up with the sheath 0043. So that I would expect to also see on something like this. It would probably have a serial number for identification so that you could pass it out to the soldiers and stuff. Now, if this was used by like Spetsnaz or something like that, maybe then it would not be marked. Or if this was something that East Germany was turning out possibly for use by the Vietnamese, because East Germany produced quite a bit of gear for the North Vietnamese army during the Vietnam conflict. So I don't know. I don't know if it would have been marked or not. But the thing is this is all speculation on my part, if this was actually a military issued knife or not. The only thing I can really say about it is it's really a curiosity. Would it have been useful for a soldier? Well, it's pretty big and heavy. That's the one thing I would say for sure. A saw blade is always helpful if you're out in the woods. This looks like a single row of teeth, and that is pretty much a something that I would expect more out of East Germany or Poland or someplace like that, especially for like a military contract. It would not be the world's greatest saw, but it would be an effective saw. And then, the blade is pretty decent. It's got a wonderful hollow grind down here, very strong spine going on with it, so that's all good. And like I said, it's really, really strong. That pole is very strong on it. That sharpening choil, that might have been something that was added later. I can't say for sure, so that might have been a modification later. And the punch on the back there, that would have been very useful for like demolitions and stuff, for poking a hole so you can stick the det cord into the C4. And obviously the bail is something that a lot of militaries do like. So there's several things about this knife that says, yeah, this could have very well been something used by the military, but there's no provenance right now to say absolutely sure that that is what it was, because it's like I said, it's kind of hard to prove it without any kind of markings or any kind of information in a book or somewhere that is saying what this knife was or how it was used. So really, all we are left with is questions to ponder. Could it be a military knife? Well, maybe yes, maybe no. It might have been something that was in small numbers. It might have been something used by the military. How did it get to the United States? If it got to the United States, I would think it would have been something that was used in Vietnam. Was it, and it was such a shape as this, the fact that it kind of looks like a Duke, and Vietnam was French Indochina before it became Vietnam. That's another thing to ponder. Could it have came to Vietnam from France? Was this something that was issued to the French Foreign Legion? It's really a bunch of questions. There's no solid evidence for any of that. It's all speculation. What we can say for sure is it's a very interesting knife. It's a very solid, well-made knife, and it is, something that is built so that a tank can roll over it and it'll still function, So it's solid, well-made, definitely heavy duty, but that isn't enough to convince me that it is truly a knife used by the military. However, there is nothing about this knife that says it was not used by the military. I guess that's the way to look at it. Could it have been? Absolutely. Do we have any proof? Not at the moment. So maybe someone out there will shed some light on this item. Maybe someone has some information, especially if I'm thinking that it might have came, I'm sure, almost positive it's out of Europe. It's not something that was made in the United States. But I don't know who made it. My feeling, because of it being unmarked, that doesn't mean anything either. This knife is unmarked, and I think this was just a very inexpensive knife that was made by a company and sold, through a catalog or something. This knife might have been under the same situation, just an inexpensive knife that was being sold through a catalog, for anybody to use, but much tougher, much more durable than that. But who knows? I have no idea. If anyone out there has any more information, I'm sure Tom from Knife Delights would like to know, and I would as well. My feeling is it was definitely influenced by the Black Cat, the K55K Black Cat, or the Duke, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was French or German. It could have easily been something from the Warsaw Pact, Soviet Union, or someplace out of Asia, considering the influence of France pre-World War II. It could also be something out of Africa, for all I know. I have no idea where it's from. But anyway, I thought I would show it, give my thoughts and speculations on it, and hope you enjoyed this. If you've got any information to share, I really would appreciate it, and so would Tom from Knife Delights. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Let me take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with Tobias. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time here.